Revealed, 3 spine-chilling true cornfield horror stories that will haunt your nights forever. Sarah took a deep breath as her old family farmhouse loomed ahead, its weathered paint peeling in the late afternoon sun. Returning to rural Ohio felt like stepping into a ghost story. A single mom, fresh from a heartbreak, she thought this would be a fresh start for her and her kids, Emily and Jake. The air buzzed with the scent of damp earth, and the surrounding cornfields whispered secrets that made her skin creep. Little did she know, those fields held legends of lost souls and sinister happenings, the kind of things you only hear in hushed tones at the local diner. Her first night there, Sarah put the kids to bed, their soft breaths lulling her into a false sense of security. But then the wind picked up. It howled like a wild animal, rattling the old windows. In the murky darkness outside, shadows shifted just beyond the corn. A shiver ran down her spine. Was that a child's laughter? She blinked, dismissing her fears. It was just old-town folklore, she convinced herself. But the stories lingered, buzzing in her mind. Children who roamed into the fields and vanished, taken by things they couldn't explain. As days turned into a week, Emily and Jake's excitement for the cornfield waned, replaced by a vague, creeping unease. They ran out to play, but Sarah noticed the way they hesitated, glancing back at the house when giggles turned to silence. Just exploring, Mommy, they'd call, but her gut twisted. The locals smiled warmly, but those smiles never quite reached their eyes. Conversation slipped away when she approached, as if they were hiding a truth trapped among the rows of Greenpoint. One sultry evening, with a storm brewing on the horizon, an unfamiliar noise echoed, a low, guttural whisper melding with the rustle of corn. Dread gripped her heart. Sarah peered out the window, her pulse racing. Were those shadows moving, or was her imagination playing tricks? The neighborhood stories played in her mind like a wicked movie reel. She half-heartedly reminded herself they were just stories. Until that fateful night when Emily and Jake vanished, thunder cracked like a whip, and rain began to pelt against the windows as the wind howled like a banshee. Panic set in. "Kids!" she screamed, her heart racing. She stumbled through the house, calling their names. No reply. The eerie silence draped over the house like a heavy fog. Breathing heavily, she shot outdoors, desperate. The corn stalks loomed like tall sentinels, hiding whatever unspeakable thing lurked beyond. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. She plunged into the cornfield, each step swallowed by the night. Whispers surrounded her, echoing with the voices of lost children. Heart pounding, she fought the disorientation, aware that the very ground was cradled in dark secrets. Shadows flitted, taunting her as they called her name, not a name marked by her family, but one bound to the anguished cries of those who lived here before. In that moment, reality warped. The tales were no longer distant shadows but threads entwined with her own fate. Would she find her children, or would the myths of this land claim her as one of their own? The wind howled like a wounded animal, and Sarah pressed deeper into the cornfield. Each rustle of the stalks was a whispered warning, and she stumbled, nearly losing her footing. "Emily! Jake!" Her voice cracked. The darkness felt alive, an entity swirling around her, probing, searching. Cold droplets of rain began to mix with the sweat on her brow, the humidity thickening the air, making it hard to breathe. Shadows darted between the cornstalks, their movements quick and erratic. They beckoned her, luring her farther away from safety. Desperation clawed at her throat. She had to find her children. She couldn't lose them to these cursed lands. Just ahead, she spotted a faint flicker of light. Hope surged through her. "Kids!" she shouted, pushing toward the glow. Light danced among the dense rows, teasing her with promises of warmth and safety. But as she approached, doubts darkened her resolve. The soft whispers grew louder, intertwining with long-forgotten names, pain spilling into her heart like poison. The laughter echoed, but it was twisted and wrong, filled with sorrow. Then she saw it. A figure, small and wavering, just beyond the reach of the light. Panic slashed through her. Was it Emily? Jake? She sprinted, her feet slapping against the muddy ground, but the figure slipped away, vanishing into the shadows. She reached the spot, breathless, and grabbed a stalk for support. The ground beneath her trembled, as if the very soil was protesting her presence. "Come back!" she cried, but the only response was a rustling that echoed like cruel laughter. The air thickened with an oppressive weight, and every instinct in her screamed to turn back. But the thought of her children, lost and scared, tied her to the spot. "Please, I'm right here." As silence swallowed her plea, a sudden chill wrapped around her. The whispers escalated into screams, a cacophony of children's voices pleading for release. The ground shook violently, and she stumbled again, falling to her knees in the mud, heart pounding. And then the ground before her split open. A gaping maw of darkness beckoned, a stark contrast to the light behind her. From within, fingers reached out, thin and skeletal, grasping. They wriggled and curled like worms, clamoring for a touch. "Join us." "Forever," the voices breathed, mournful and alluring. Sarah felt their pull, a sensation both revolting and strangely comforting. Tears streamed down her face as her heart thudded in a frantic rhythm. She had to make a choice. A scream erupted in her throat, but who would hear her? Would the shadowy figures claim her, or could she fight her way back to the light and seek out her children? As panic threatened to overwhelm her, a memory surfaced: the sweet face of little Jake, his laughter brightening her darkest days. She clung to that image, channeling every ounce of strength. With a surge of primal terror, she staggered to her feet, shaking off the tendrils of darkness that clawed at her. The whispers turned to wails, echoing her refusal. She was not ready to be lost. Not yet. Her legs moved instinctively, racing back toward the light. Behind her, the ground began to close, but not before she caught a glimpse of what it concealed. Faces, many faces, twisted in agony, buoys drowning in a sea of despair. Their cries grew more desperate, mocking her escape. "You can't run, you are one of us now." As she burst free from the rows of corn, the desperate darkness behind faded into the night. Breathing heavily, she stood gasping in front of her home, eyes wide. "Emily! Jake!" she shouted, fear flooding back in a chilling wave. The house loomed silent and menacing. And just as hope began to flicker back, a soft giggle drifted from within, echoing the familiar instincts of innocence. But that sound twisted in her chest. Was it them? Or something more sinister, waiting for her to step inside? The door creaked open, seemingly of its own accord, beckoning her back into the gloom. Sarah stood at the threshold, a terrifying choice ahead. Would she enter the all-consuming darkness of the house, in search of her lost children? Or would she heed the whispers of the corn, revealing the truth of what awaited her inside? The storm raged on, and with it, the question hung in the air: what lay waiting for her on the other side of that threshold? With a deep breath, Sarah stepped forward, uncertainty clawing at her insides. The air was thick with an unshakable foreboding. "Emily? Jake?" she called again, her voice trembling. Each echo felt like a betrayal, returning to her with cruel mockery. She stepped inside, the door creaking shut behind her as if sealing her fate. The dim light from the hallway flickered, dancing as if it were alive. Shadows clung to the corners, creeping closer with each beat of her heart. Sarah's pulse raced, matching the low hum of an unseen presence. It filled the air, thick and suffocating, a palpable dread that sent chills down her spine. The soft giggle came again, pulling her deeper into the house. It was sweet, innocent, yet something was horridly wrong. The walls seemed to close in as she made her way down the hall, each step feeling heavier than the last. Kids. The corners of her vision played tricks, twisting the familiar into the grotesque. A picture frame, once bright with their smiles, now hung crooked, the faces smudged and contorted. She turned, her breath hitching. This place felt wrong, like shadows were swallowing the light whole. The giggle echoed again, this time from the living room. Sarah hesitated, the urge to flee clawing at her mind. But she pushed the door open, heart hammering. The room lay in utter chaos. Toys were scattered everywhere, a childlike battlefield of stuffed animals and blocks. But where were her children? Emily? Jake? She shouted, desperation tinged with fear. The air felt charged, as if reality itself shifted beneath her feet. A faint whisper curled around her ear, like a lover's tender breath, yet it sent icy terror down her spine. Join us. She forced herself to move, stepping carefully across the room, sensing the weight of unseen eyes watching her. Shadows danced mockingly, teasing her with their movements. The warmth she sought was replaced by an icy chill that settled deep within her bones, then she saw it, a tiny hand reaching out from behind the couch. Relief surged, but it was quickly drowned by dread. Jake! She gasped, her heart threatening to burst as the dim light illuminated the familiar face. But it didn't look right. His eyes were dark, hollowed, as if they were windows into the abyss. "Mommy," he whispered, but his voice was distorted, layered with unearthly echoes. The familiar sound twisted painfully, sending waves of nausea through her. "Come here." She reached out, but he didn't move. Instead, shadows began to creep closer, wrapping around him, hiding him. "Jake!" Panic erupted, and she lunged forward, but the air turned thick and sticky, pulling her back. Then, another sound cut through the tension. Laughter, but not the sweet kind. It was edged with malice, rising from the darkness that pressed against her. "You can't leave us, Sarah, they're safe here. Get away from him." She shouted, but her words felt powerless against the thickening gloom. The darkness began to wriggle and twist, reaching for her like the long fingers that had called to her earlier. In her blind panic, Sarah turned to run back towards the door, heart pounding, but it was gone. The door vanished, replaced by a wall of shadows that pulsed with a life of its own. The room itself seemed to shudder, quaking with a terrible force. "Join us forever," her instincts screamed at her to escape, but her feet felt weighed down, roots digging into a haunting ground. She couldn't lose Jake, couldn't leave him to whatever dark force held him. "Mommy!" His voice broke through the despair. In that moment, a flicker of warmth sparked within her. She charged, pushing against the shadows, clawing, fighting with every fiber in her being. As she reached for him, everything exploded into a blinding light, and then nothing. The room plunged into silence. Sarah blinked, disoriented. The darkness receded, but not entirely. A low hum resonated beneath her feet. In the eerie stillness, she looked around. Jake was gone. In his place stood a figure, shrouded in shadow, its face obscured. Sarah fought to regain her breath, trembling. The entity pointed towards the darkness that slithered at the edges of the room. "You've awakened what sleeps, and you're too late." Fury and fear cascaded through her. "Where are my children?" Her voice cracked but held an edge of defiance. "Now, you join them," it whispered. As the shadows began to pull her in once more, she realized something chilling. The voices in the corn hadn't just called to her, they had waited for a moment like this. Now, the choice was slipping away yet again. What darkness awaited her as she faced the unknown, inching closer with every heartbeat? The white light faded, leaving Sarah in a void, the dark entity standing before her, an omnipresent threat. Shadows swirled and crashed around her like waves against a shipwreck. Panic clawed at her throat as she felt the ground shift beneath her, disorienting her senses. "Where are they?" She gasped, her voice barely a whisper against the storm of shadows. It felt like the air had become heavier, suffocating her. The shadowy figure merely stood there, its finger extending toward the black abyss. "You dug too deep," it said, its voice echoing like whispers in a windstorm. "They are the price of your curiosity. I'll do anything," she cried, the desperation spilling from her heart. "Just tell me where to find Jake and Emily." The shadows trembled, forming a grotesque mouth that twisted into something resembling a grin. The figure drew closer, the darkness wrapping tighter around Sarah, grazing her skin with a cold touch that sent shivers down her spine. "You cannot bargain with what has awakened. They are part of this now, part of the dark." Breath quickening, Sarah glanced around, searching for a center in the chaos swirling around her like a hungry predator. "Please. I can't lose them." She struggled against the coldness coiling onto her like snakes, each one constricting her breath. Suddenly, a distant, echoing laugh pierced through the gloom. Emily's laugh, innocent and bright, as if she were playing in the backyard. "Mommy, come play." The sound cracked around her, splinters of light weaving through the shadows. They brought her crashing back to moments when her world was whole and bright, before this nightmare began. "Emily!" she shouted instinctively. But as quickly as the laughter came, it vanished, replaced by the dark figure's grin spreading like a cloud obscuring the sun. "Would you like to see them?" it teased, the mockery lacing its words like a poison. The shadows writhed tighter around her, beginning to drag her down. Would she see them or lose herself completely to the darkness? "Enough!" she screamed, her voice echoing against an unseen wall of dread. Drawing on the last reserves of her courage, she thought of Jake's tiny fingers, the warmth of Emily's embrace. In that moment, she felt something shift. The shadows hesitated, recoiling as if something had disturbed their dominion. "No. You shouldn't be strong. You should be afraid." With renewed vigor, Sarah screamed the names of her children into the abyss, her words solid and fierce. "Jake! Emily! I'm coming!" The shadows shrieked in response, a cacophony filled with rage and fear, as if they could feel the bond of a mother's love burning through their grip. The world around her began to pulsate, light bursting forth in patches, illuminating fragments of memories, Emily's pigtails swaying as she spun in the sun, Jake laughing with delight while trying to catch fireflies. But, as the light grew, so did the darkness anger. It lashed out, pulling her closer, trying to silence her voice. "You belong with us!" it screamed, and for a moment the ground beneath her feet flickered as if it would give way. "They're waiting!" Sarah cried out defiantly as she pushed against the shadow that threatened to swallow her whole. "You can't have them!" The shadow figure faltered, its form glitching, flickering between presence and absence. "You cannot win," it hissed. Yet, Sarah felt her resolve harden. She started to move toward the light, pulling with all her strength against the darkness that swirled. Just then, she heard another sound, a whisper so close it felt like a ghost grazing her neck. "Mommy, please!" It was Jake's voice, pure and pleading. He was near. She had to reach him. As she tore through the remaining shadows, she realized they were not invincible. The warmth of the children's love was a beacon, strong enough to cut through the thickest darkness. Just as the darkness loomed large again, she saw a crack form in it, a doorway, shimmering with hope. "Jake! Emily!" she yelled as she lunged towards the light. But just as she stepped inside, the shadows roared, "You've miscalculated your chances, Sarah. The price is mine." The light burst around her like a cocoon, but she felt a pull as if the dark was trying to take her back, force her to stay. Would she make it? Would she have to pay the ultimate price? As the last piece of shadow lashed out, tearing at her with clawing fingers, Sarah braced herself for impact. What awaited her in the glowing abyss? Would she find her children, or was the darkness just beginning its relentless grip? The blinding light enveloped Sarah, yet the shadows clung to her, fraying at the edges of her consciousness. A violent quake surged through her as the darkness howled behind her, a cacophony of outrage that seemed to stretch time itself. "Don't look back, she told herself, pushing forward, her pulse hammering like a war drum in her ears. The light intensified, colors bursting through like fireworks, a stark contrast against the suffocating black that sought to reclaim her. But as she entered the shimmering abyss, the brightness dissolved, and she found herself in a strange new realm, a cornfield bathed in an eerie twilight. Tall stalks loomed over her, whispering secrets in the wind. It felt alive, breathing, waiting. "Jake? Emily?" she whispered, dread knotting in her gut. There was an unsettling stillness that permeated the air, an atmosphere thick with a sense of foreboding. She started to walk, the ground beneath her feet soft and yielding. Suddenly, the distant sound of laughter danced through the air again, not her children's this time, but something raw and wicked. It echoed, mockingly, as if the very field was taunting her. "Mommy, come play." The voice twisted into something dark, sending chills up her spine. "Stop it!" Sarah screamed into the empty space, but the laughter only crescendoed, mingling with the rustling of the corn, building a chorus that felt like an oncoming storm. A shadow flickered at the edge of her vision, darting between the corn stalks. Heart racing, she turned, her breath hitching. "Who's there?" she called, trying to sound brave. No answer. Only silence, thick and oppressive, suffocating her will. As she pushed deeper into the field, the whispers intensified, rising and falling like an ominous tide. Each step felt heavier, like the very ground beneath her wanted to drag her down. The thrill of the chase ignited something primal in her, fear manifested as adrenaline. Where were her children? Jake? Emily? She cried out again, desperation lacing her voice. The laughter morphed, grating at her mind. "Help us, Mommy." Now it sounded as if the corn stalks were speaking. The hushed tones seeped into her very being, clawing at her sanity. The field itself became a maze, and she could feel it closing in on her. Panic clawed at her throat as she ran, trying to break free from the suffocating laughter that echoed in her mind. In her frantic dash, she stumbled upon a clearing. At its center stood a dilapidated scarecrow, its straw arms outstretched like a grotesque guardian of secrets. Heart in her throat, Sarah edged closer. Something glinted at its feet, a small set of shoes. "Jake?" She knelt, carefully picking up the shoes. They were scuffed and worn, unmistakably her son's. Ice flooded her veins as she looked up, scanning the darkening edges of the field. "Emily!" she shouted, but the wind swallowed her words, marring them into the air like lost hopes. "Mommy, we're here." The voices twined around her, drawing closer, alluring and sickening all at once. The scarecrow leaned, its hollow eyes boring into her, and she realized it wasn't just a guardian. It was watching her, waiting. She felt trapped in its gaze, as if every whisper, every sigh of the corn had led her here. "Come join us," it whispered, and as the wind picked up, the stalks began to sway rhythmically, hypnotically, as if dancing to a sinister tune. Shadows flickered between them, darting just out of sight. A sickening dread washed over her. She had to move. She turned to flee but froze. The shadows converged in a swirling mass, the air thickening with the smell of rot. They were hungry, and they wanted her. "Where are you?" she screamed into the shadows. A soft laugh filled the air, tainted with malice. "You can't escape this, Sarah. The field will claim you." Her heart raced as she felt something prick at her skin, like tiny needles digging in. She realized the ground was alive, weaving and twisting, as the shadows stretched out to grasp her ankles. Just then, through the cacophony of jeering laughter, she recognized a familiar sound, the bright tinkling of a wind chime far away. The children had it. "Jake! Emily!" she shouted again, the urgency rattling her bones, as the shadows coiled tighter around her. The darkness was insistent, and so was the light. In that moment, bursts of memories flooded her, fragile images of warmth and joy, reminding her of what was at stake. She wouldn't let the darkness take them or her. But as the fear clawed at her chest, something flickered in the darkness, morphing into familiar silhouettes standing just beyond the reach of the cornfield. What would she risk to reach them? "Come, Mommy." They beckoned, their innocent voices fighting against the suffocating darkness. But she felt the ground shift beneath her, the urge to keep her distance echoing in the back of her mind. How far would she go to pull them back from the shadows? What price must she pay? As the darkness writhed closer, wanting to consume her, Sarah stood on the precipice, heart racing, choices swirling like the shadows around her. What was lurking just beyond the grasp of the cornfield? Would she save them or become the field's next victim? The shadows closed in as Sarah fought against the growing dread that threatened to consume her. Panic surged through her like a cold tide, drowning out the allure of her children's voices. "I can't let them pull me in," she thought wildly, but they were so close now, their figures dancing teasingly between the stalks, beckoning to her with outstretched hands. "Jake! Emily!" She screamed again, her voice cracking with raw fear. But their faces began to waver, distorted by the swirling blackness. No more innocent smiles, only shadowed grins that twisted her heart in knots. "Mommy, come. We want to play." The voices became more mischievous, their laughter bubbling over, mocking her with every breath she took. Each giggle escalated into something sinister, a melody steeped in despair. The air thickened, blending her panic with their malevolence. The darkness, alive and insidious, continued to creep along her legs. She tried to shake it off, to break free, but the ground felt like quicksand, pulling her into its depths. The scarecrow leaned closer, its eyes burning with a hunger that chilled her to the bone. The whispering continued, growing louder, enveloping her in a cloud of doubt and despair. "Join us." Just then, she felt a tug inside her, an instinct sharper than fear. If she reached out, that would mean succumbing to the very thing trying to lure her in. "No. I want to do it." The resolve surged through her, and she focused all her strength on tearing her gaze from the grotesque figure of the creature that wanted her to join its encroaching darkness. With a fierce scream, Sarah turned and bolted back towards the entry of the field. Dubious laughter chased her, weaving through the air with horrific ease. The whispers turned into a chorus of shrieks. "You can't escape. You're one of us." Shadows flapped at her heels like wings, tugging and biting. The corn stalks began to sway, as if trying to claw at her, but each thud of her heart pulsed with determination. "Jake! Emily!" She called amidst the chaos, willing herself to remember the warmth of their embrace. As she stumbled through the rows, she caught glimpses of them, their silhouettes flitting just beyond her reach. The flickering light of the wind chime rang clearer, and desperation clawed through her. "I will not leave you behind," she cried, pushing forward. The world around her shifted again, the field began vibrating with a life of its own, each stalk recoiling as she stumbled further into the maze. Still, the calls persisted. "Mommy! Come play. Play." How could they want to play at a time like this? With renewed vigor, Sarah surged past the dilapidated scarecrow, resisting the urge to look back. But just as she thought she was breaking free, a shadow lunged out, capturing her wrist in a cold grip. The panic surged once more as she was yanked back, her feet dragging through the soil, desperately clawing for something, anything to hold onto. In that moment, as the choking darkness began to circle her, the distant chime rang out again, bright against the dread. "Jake! Emily!" She screamed, but the shadows were becoming stronger, words fading into sinister laughter. Just then, an unexpected brilliancy erupted from the other end of the field, an ethereal glow, pulsating rhythmically. It threw stark shadows against the corn, illuminating a path amidst the chaos. Sarah leaned into the light, where visions of her children swirled, glimmering like stars in a consumed sky, but shadows surged again, hungry and insatiable. They lunged for her, ripping at her resolve. She had a choice: leap into the light or fight the ever-tightening grip of the field's darkness. With everything hanging in the balance, she reached for the light, closing her eyes against the screams of her children as the field let out a wail of fury. What waited beyond the glow? Would the light guide her safely, or was it just another trap? The chilling climax loomed closer, and Sarah braced for impact. The boundaries of reality felt on the brink of shattering, the moment of truth neared. Would she emerge whole, or would the field swallow her forever? The light engulfed her, illuminating every inch of the field in a strange, golden hue. For a moment, Sarah felt warmth and safety wrap around her like a comforting blanket. But as she stepped forward, the cold grips of shadow started to recede, only to be replaced by a shattering chill, one that sunk deep into her bones, igniting new fears. "Jake! Emily!" She cried again, her voice now trembling, uncertainty clawing at her throat. The brightness shimmered, wavering like a candle flame in the wind, flickering against the chaos that still lurked in the corners. Then, in the heart of the warm light, she spotted them. Their faces had changed. No longer the joyful grins from before, they now wore expressions of confusion, eyes wide with fear. "Mommy?" said Jake, his voice so small it was almost swallowed by the whispering corn. "You're here? You came?" "Mommy, we were playing hide and seek," Emily added, her pigtails bobbing as she bounced on her toes, excitement bubbling forth. Panic washed over Sarah anew. No. This isn't right. The innocent games of children now felt tainted, the very air thickening with dread. The shadows around her trembled, seemingly drawn to the truth of her panic. They surged, reforming into dark shapes that twisted and growled. "Hungry. Join us," the voices echoed again, blending with the laughter of her children, the tones warped, wrapped in shadows. A chill embraced Sarah, forcing a shudder through her spine. Could this be a cruel trick? Had she leapt out of the frying pan and into the fire? "What's wrong, Mommy? Why don't you want to play?" Jake's expression began to wobble, the innocence draining away. Suddenly, he wasn't just a child. He was a chilling version of himself, an emptiness lurking behind his once bright eyes. In that moment, the shadows flickered and coiled, slithering like snakes, whispering promises of delight laced in torment. "You can be with them forever. Just give in." "No!" Sarah shouted, pulling back as panic ignited inside her. "You're not my children." Her heart raced as she felt something dark crawling beneath her skin, echoing with every beat. The shadows writhed, more insistent now, and began to close in like a vice. The light shifted. What had been a sanctuary began to bleed into madness. Glancing away from the horrid joy of her children, she could see the corn begin to lean closer, prickly and unpredictable, blades trembling as if eager to pierce flesh. With grit, Sarah pushed forward, her resolve hardening. "I want to let you take me," she screamed, her voice cracking against the tide of malevolence. The children wailed, the sound tearing at her heart as their forms distorted further, transforming into shadows of their former selves. Then, just beyond the light, another shape began to emerge. An entity, distinctly different from the bleakness surrounding it, a tall figure in white, standing at the edge of the cornfield, arms wide open, inviting her into a different embrace. Hope flickered. "Sarah." The voice was a soothing balm, cutting through the clamor. It belonged to a figure she recognized. Her mother, but was that embrace real or just another illusion meant to ensnare her? With the shadows grasping at her, promising her children's smiles and laughter, she hesitated, heart pounding in her chest. Could she trust what appeared to be a beacon of hope? Or was it another trap lying in wait? As she locked eyes with her mother's figure, Sarah felt the shadows ripple around her, angered and vengeful. "Join us, Sarah," they hissed. The light flickered again, illuminating glimpses of both promises, one of despair and one of hope. What awaited her? Safety in her mother's arms or eternal damnation in the depths of the field? The choice loomed like a tower above her, dark and towering. Sarah stood there, teetering on the edge of a decision, as shadows tightened around her. Which path would she choose? Just then, an agonized scream erupted from the darkness, echoing across the field. "Mommy, you promised." The world around her was spiraling out of control. Could she save herself and her children from the deadly Embrace of the cornfield? Or would she be forced to live in the shadows forever? The shadows lunged closer, their whispers turning into a cacophony, an overwhelming sound that clawed at Sarah's sanity. She could feel their cold breath against her skin, each gust igniting a flicker of panic in her heart. The faces of her children morphed further, twisted smiles now stretching painfully wide. "Join us, Mommy," they pleaded, their voices merging into one, a haunting refrain that echoed through the field. "No. I want tea." Sarah screamed again, desperation mingling with survival instinct. She felt the ground beneath her tremble, alive with the restless energy of the cornstalks surrounding her. The figure of her mother remained an inviting beacon, yet doubt clawed at Sarah's mind as the shadows pressed in, determined to ensnare her. "Choose." They howled, the darkness growing heavier, the air thick with despair. "Get away from them," she shouted, lifting her arms defensively, willing herself to push the shadows back. Then the figure in white stepped forward, unfurling like a flower in the sun. "Come to me, my dear," it beckoned, the voice tender and familiar, but tainted by a haunting undertone. If it were her mother, why did it feel wrong? Before she could think, Jake's voice quavered again. "Mommy, please." We're scared. Her heart shattered at the sight of Jake's tortured visage, his eyes melding into endless pools of darkness. Emily's laughter rang out, desperate and unhinged. "We just want to play." The shadows were swirling, morphing into grotesque shapes, whispering promises of joy and family tied in a binding dread. Sarah felt a terrible rage swell within her, a protective snarl. These weren't her children, they were a mockery, a nightmare of who they could be. "I don't believe you," she spat, feeling fierce warmth flood her body in defiance. In that moment of clarity, she focused on the light again, the figure waiting with unwavering arms. Sarah leaped forward, leaving the whispers behind, willing herself toward the figure. But just as she took a few fervent steps, a shadow lunged, a long arm grasping for her ankle. She stumbled, falling into darkness. "No!" she shrieked, and before she could hit the ground, a rush of force enveloped her, lifting her back into a cocoon of light. She gasped, seeing the figure again. "Mom?" Sarah's voice trembled, the warmth feeling intoxicating. "Come, my child," her mother urged, arms reaching out, persistent like the sun through dark clouds, but as Sarah approached, she noticed something flicker in her mother's eyes. A shadow flashed across her features, a sinister smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "You can be with them forever." The shadows laughed, actual laughter that echoed through the field, wrapping around her like a shroud of chaos. "Join us forever and ever." Fear gripped her soul once more. Instinct kicked in, this was all wrong. In a desperate bid, she pulled away from the insidious light, eyes darting back to her children. She had barely made the decision when a loud snap echoed, a stalk snapping at its base, darkness shifting like an angry beast. The cornfield responded to her choice, the stalks leaning ominously, ready to trap her in their twisted embrace. Shadows howled with fury, and suddenly, the ground shook violently beneath her, as if the forces of the field were awakening with hunger. "Don't leave us!" Jake cried out, and for a split second, Sarah faltered, caught between the two worlds of love and darkness, the pull of lost innocence almost too great to resist. But then, as if the wind blew in warning, she heard a voice, small and but clear. "Mommy, fight!" She hesitated and then sprang into action. The shadows writhed around her, clawing as she raced for the edge of the field, where the flickering light called her back again. When she reached that thin border between darkness and light, she felt an overwhelming force holding her back. "Sarah!" The shadows screamed, "You will never escape." Just as she stretched her arms toward the light, she glimpsed the figure of her mother retreating back into the depths of the shadows, fading away. The screams of her children pierced the air, desperate and haunting, as shadows surged forward to pull her into the abyss. With one final surge of willpower, she pushed through, the light enveloping her entirely. Had she made it? Had she really escaped? But what Sarah didn't know was as the light swallowed her, something sinister lurked even deeper, waiting for her next moment of weakness, and far behind her, in the heart of the cornfield, a new figure emerged, shrouded in darkness, with chilling laughter that filled the air. The world of light shattered. Sarah tumbled out into a different reality. The cornfield was gone. Instead, she lay against the rough surface of an abandoned barn. Flickering shadows danced against the wooden walls, a reminder that darkness wasn't too far away. The stench of mildew and decay filled her nostrils, heavy and suffocating. "Where am I?" she whispered, panic clawing at the edges of her mind. She scrambled to her feet, surveying the empty space. Dust motes floated in the shafts of light that streamed through broken panes. Was this a safe place? She felt cold sweat trickle down her back, the chill crawling into her bones. "Mommy?" A voice called out, soft and fragile. It was Jake. "Jake?" she shouted, her heart leaping. Desperation surged within her. "Where are you?" The darkness thickened, curling through the barn like a living thing. The voice echoed again, this time warped and sinister. "Mommy, come and find us. Stay where you are," she yelled, dread heavy in her chest. The shadows quivered, taunting her. Just then, she spotted them figures standing at the back of the barn. Her children. Relief washed over her, but it was short-lived. As she got closer, she saw their faces were pale, contorted into expressions of anguish, eyes wide and vacant. "Jake! Emily!" The figures moved, but their bodies didn't match the way they used to move. Distorted limbs stretched and blurred, as if they were puppets on broken strings. "Mommy, why did you leave us?" Emily's voice was sweet, yet laced with poison. Her laughter twisted, echoing off the barn walls a melody of despair that pierced Sarah's heart. She stammered, feeling the world tilt. The place reeked of sorrow, and she fought the urge to buckle under its weight. "I didn't leave you. I am here now." But shadows crept closer, caressing the children's feet, their fingers curling, pulling at them a torrid invitation. Sarcastic whispers swirled around, filling her ears with seductive promises. Join us forever." "No!" Sarah shouted, the denial surging like a river within her. "You're not my children." The figures jerked, their movements statuesque before the shadows twisted their limbs again. "Mommy, we just want to play," they sang, the laughter melding with the soft whisper of the encroaching darkness. Sarah's feet carried her back, fighting against the tide of despair. The barn door shuddered, splintered wood creaked dangerously. A sense of urgency gripped her. She hadn't come this far to succumb now. A dark corner of the barn shifted, and a silhouette emerged, a mass of shadow tethered to the barn like a malevolent spirit. It slid toward her, its voice a deep rumble. "You can't escape, Sarah. They are mine now." The threat sent a jolt through her. Was this the new figure? She could see it more clearly, eyes like black holes, pulling in every drop of light. It seemed to engulf the space with despair. The shadows wrapped around her like ropes, binding her heart to turmoil. "Fight!" echoed in her head, the last voice urging her on. "Remember who you are." In that moment, Sarah remembered her children's laughter, the warmth of their embrace. With a surge of resolve, she shouted, "I am not afraid of you." The shadows hesitated. Whatever this creature was, it faltered just for an instant. She pushed forward, the flood of memories fueling her strength. The barn quaked and moaned, shadows recoiling from her courage, power surged within her, and she found herself ready to clash with the looming darkness. But just as she took a step forward, everything flickered around her. A cacophony of screams flooded her senses. Had she made the right choice? Suddenly, the ground trembled violently, and the silhouette roared. "You will pay for that." Terror clawed at her throat as a chasm opened at her feet, revealing depths filled with absolute darkness. "Mommy!" The call echoed, but it was very different now, blending with the shadows, a mournful echo as the figure lunged. She braced for impact, heart racing, knowing now that the fight was far from over. What new hell awaited her in this realm of darkness? The shadows raged around Sarah, twisting and writhing like a storm come to life. Fear pulsed through her veins, but something deeper surged, fury mixed with love. "I will not lose them," she roared, her voice strong and fierce, tearing through the trembling air like a battle cry. As the dark figure lunged at her, Sarah closed her eyes for a heartbeat, mentally summoning every cherished moment, the laughter, the playtime, that sweet innocence of her children. The warmth cascaded through her, igniting a fierce resolve. "I will fight for you," she yelled, stepping boldly toward the darkness, arms raised. Shadows recoiled in response, their grip loosening momentarily, and the figure paused, sensing the shift. Sarah felt the power within her build, a force of pure love and unwavering determination. "Jake! Emily! I am coming for you." The words resonated, shaking the walls of the barn, reverberating through the thick air. The shadow figure sneered back, its dark eyes glistening with malice. "You are too late. They have chosen their fate," it taunted, its voice like gravel sliding against metal. "No!" Sarah screamed, gritting her teeth. The memories of her children flooded her mind, filling her with strength. "You can't have them. They are my children." Suddenly, the floor began to shake beneath her, the darkness swirled, growing fierce, but she charged forward, her heartbeat loud, pounding with reckless bravery. Each step was a testament to her will. With a desperate leap, Sarah broke through the line of shadows, crashing toward her children. "Jake! Emily!" she cried, fighting through the thickening despair that hung in the barn like a suffocating fog. The children flinched, their distorted features faltering for a moment. "Mommy?" Jake's voice broke her heart, a glimpse of the boy she loved shining through the horror. "Help us." "Yes, my darlings. I'm here." Running forward, her hands reached out, grasping for them, desperation seeping into every fiber of her being. The darkness lashed out, seeking to reclaim her, gnashing like a hungry wolf. But now, she was fueled by a burning conviction. Holding firmly onto the life they shared, she felt their warmth linger in her palms, her heart racing as she pulled them back. The shadows hissed, screeching as she yanked the children close, feeling the barriers weakening. Emily stood tall, though fear painted her features, those innocent eyes not yet dulled. "We want to go home. And you will," Sarah promised, pulling them close, channeling all her love into an unbreakable bond. As she spoke, something within the darkness trembled, the very essence of the shadows rippling like water under relentless pressure. In an act of defiance, Sarah stepped outside the boundaries of fear. The wooden door of the barn slammed open, flooding the space with a blaring beam of golden light that pierced the heart of the darkness. A roar erupted from the figure behind them, its face twisting with rage. "You will pay for this, Sarah." But she didn't turn back. With her children in tow, they staggered into the brightness, the warmth wrapping around them until they felt almost weightless, the light pulsating with life. The anguished cries of shadows were lost in the radiance, dissipating like smoke beneath the sun. For a moment, everything stalled, the air stilled, and the feeling of safety enveloped them. "Are we safe, Mommy?" Jake asked, his small hand tightening around hers. "Yes," she breathed, feeling both relieved and exhausted. "We're together." But then, the earth trembled once more. "This isn't over," echoed in the backdrop, the entity fuming, vengeful, relentless. "You can't escape forever." Fleeting panic threatened to drown her, but Sarah squeezed her children's hands tighter. "We will always fight for each other," she said, determination thickening her voice. Stepping forward, bathed in light, they disappeared from that realm, suddenly bursting back into the safety of their home. Everything was as it should be. The old farmhouse stood intact, the cornfields distant and still, dreams without shadows. In the silence of that moment, as daylight streamed in through the windows, Sarah pulled her kids into her arms. Let South always stay close together, she whispered, relief flooding her as she held them tightly. Though she could still feel the lurking darkness within her, the shadows that had almost consumed them, they were safe. For now. Mommy? Whispered Emily, brushing her fingers over Sarah's face, sensing the lingering weight. What happened? Just a bad dream that turned real, Sarah replied softly. But we woke up. We're here together and nothing will tear us apart again. As laughter bubbled up in her heart, the shadow of the past lingered on the edges, but with her children beside her, she knew they had a chance to build a new story, one filled with light, laughter, and love. Nothing could hold her family captive any longer. Now, take a moment, my friend. If you loved this story, you need to subscribe immediately to our channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Remember to smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help us grow. And seriously, flood the comments section with your reactions and wild theories about the ending. We love hearing from you. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support.